Okay, so how do we find a slope between 2 points? I'm not going to worry about defining a slope. There's plenty of YouTube videos on that. Those YouTube videos, so also use the delta symbol, which I'm not going to be using. Zion, this is for you ultimately, but anybody else can use this. Zion, I'm actually going to use the worksheet that you want help with, and I hope that I make this make sense. Now, you probably have forgotten this when I was teaching you a slope. There's basically three ways to find slope, okay? Or there's three ways you need to be able to do it, okay? And then this is going to be the third example. So way number one, people will teach you when it comes to a graph. What am I looking for? When you're looking at a graph, slope is rise over run. Okay, and if you are paying attention, the rise, that's actually, remember, this is the y-axis. So you're looking, how much does it change? I'm going to move all of this over here. Not you, you're going to stay there. So how much is that changing? And then the run, which is the x-axis, is how much is that changing? How much is the x changing? Okay? So you will hear it also said change in y over change in x. That's rise over run. So for a graph, you just, it's simply put, you're basically just counting boxes. I know there's a lot more involved with that, but for graphing, you're just counting boxes. How many up, how many over? That's your slope, usually written as a fraction. For this, how much is this changing? That's your change in x. How much is this changing? That's your change in y. Write it as a fraction. But remember, it's y, change in y over change in x. Now let's talk about coordinates, the third category this worksheet's about. How do we find slope between two coordinates? Well, it's the same concept. Change in y over change in x. And to find out how much is changing when you can't count boxes, what you're going to want to be able to do, let me turn the music down real quick. I'll turn it off. Okay. So, to be able to find it, there's another formula that they probably want you to know. And it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now, this is the slope formula for coordinates, okay? Here's the good news. It seems complicated, but here's what you need to remember about coordinates, okay? And I'm going to have to go pretty skinny for this. With a coordinate, let's look at this one. Let's look at the first coordinate, 5, 2. With a coordinate, there's an x and a y. Which one comes first? Well, if you have a hard time remembering which one comes first, think of the alphabet. Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. What comes first, the x or the y? Always the x and then the y. So here, you have an x coordinate and you have a y coordinate. Also, with the 8 and the 3, you have an x and you have a y coordinate. Now, this is your first x, this is your second x. This is your I can't go back. This is your first y, and this is your second y. And I'm going to clean it up over here so that you can see it a little bit better, because I don't know how well this is going to translate on the screen. So, you have 5, 2, and you have 8, 3. Okay? Now, this is your first x. This is your first y. This is the first x and first y. Now, this is your second x and y. So think of it as x2 and y2. Okay? Simple enough. Now, let's go back. I'm going to put the formula in red up here. Well, remember, it's change in y over change in x. And if you're still confused, don't worry. Once you see this done a few times, I think you'll get the hang of this. As long as I highly recommend you use a calculator, because you're going to be subtracting, it's probably going to be negatives, or you might be subtracting a small positive minus a large positive, which is going to be a negative. So if you're allowed to use a calculator, please do so. It's going to help you out tremendously, okay? So now you're just plugging in and solving. If I would have spaced it out more, I could have just moved this. And unfortunately, the whole thing is going to move. So I'm just going to highlight, and here's how I'm going to do this. So let me go yellow here. Let's go yellow. Y1. Y1 is going to be yellow. And then Y2 is going to be... No, let's keep the Y's yellow. Let's do it that way. Okay? Y1 and Y2 are yellow. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to substitute. I'm going to take Y2. What in the world is y2? Well, this is y2. It's 3. So I'm going to take 3. I'm going to put it here. Now, what's y1? Well, y1's value is 2. I'm going to put that right there. So, what's 3 minus 2? Well, that's easy. That's 1. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for the x. Let me go green. So, x1 is 5. x2 is 8. So, x2 right here, well, that's 8. And x1 is 5. I just substituted. And 8 minus 5 is 3. And guess what? I'm done. That's the slope. That's it. We'll talk about this in just a little bit, if I have time. But for now, that's how you find slope. I'm going to do a few more, because I know that's messy. So, the slope for this is 1 over 3. I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit for you, okay? So, number 2. Make it a little bit larger. Okay, so that's answer number 1. And I hope you show your work. Number 2. So, let's put the answer up here. I'm going to circle it so I can put the formulas in red over here. So remember, slope is change in y over change in x. And that's really how you find it with the graph. But with the coordinate, you're going to do this formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now let's label these. I'm going to put them just like this. I'm going to put 2, 5 here. I'm going to put negative 3, negative 5 here, just so that you can see me write a little bit larger. And this is my first x. This is my y. First y. This is my other x and my other y. I'm going to put the 2's next here. Think of it as first x, first y, second x, second y. That might make it a little bit easier to remember. Now you're just substituting and solving, okay? It's that simple. You're going to substitute this 5 in place of this y2, and that's a negative 5. Forgive me for not seeing that. That's a negative 5. And then this 5 for this y1. So it's going to look like this. y2, negative 5, minus y1 over, now let me go and put a minus there. My x2 is negative 3, my x1 is 2. Now I just solved this. In my calculator, negative 5 minus 5 is negative 10. Negative 3 minus 2, my calculator is negative 5. Now, can I simplify this? If you have good math sense, you'll realize that you can simplify it, and also a negative divided by a negative is a positive always. So this is the exact same value as this. And 10 divided by 5 is what? That's a 2. So my slope for number 2 is 2. Okay? I got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. And then the bells are going to ring and my students are going to come in. They're like, Mr. Norman, what are you doing with your mask off? All right, number 3. So, I wish I could make this bigger. I'm going to try. I just don't know how well you guys can see it. I think that's as big as it gets, but I think that's going to be big enough. So, number 3. This is my x1. This is my x2. This is my y1. This is my y2. And remember, the formula. Let me write it big so I can substitute. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So now it's as simple as just substituting and then solving. Okay? So, let me go back. x1, where's x1? Oh, it's right here on the bottom right. So let me put a 6 there. My y1 is negative 2. I'm doing this out of order than the ones I did the other time, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter. My x2 is 5. Let me substitute that. And then my y2 is negative 2. And so I'm going to put that right there. Now it's just solving. Negative 2 minus negative 2 is a 0, because that's technically negative 2 plus 2. And when you add opposites, you always get 0. And 5 minus 6 is negative 1. Okay? Now, I'm going to take my calculator out because I'll be honest, I have no idea if this is undefined or if it's 0. It's either one or the other. So let me get my calculator. Let me put 0 divided, 0 divided by, and I get 0. So this has a slope of 0. Okay, which means if you're graphing it, if a slope is 0, it's going to be completely horizontal. Not going up, not going down, but going straight across. That's what it's doing. That is what it's doing. So that has a slope. That has a slope of 0. Okay? Now, why was I saying I wanted to check my calculator? Shouldn't that be obvious? Well, it should be. But here's what I was worried about. If you got this instead, which is definitely possible, and I put this in my calculator, negative 1 divided by 0, it says can't divide by 0. This is when it would be undefined. And what that looks like is the exact opposite of a horizontal line. And what that would be is a vertical line. When you have a vertical line like this, you can't tell, is that increasing, is it decreasing? I don't know if it's going down or up. I can't tell. That's when it's undefined. You can't determine the slope is undefined. So there's a 0 slope, which is horizontal, when the numerator is 0, and an undefined slope is when the denominator is 0, okay? So that's number 3. I'll do one more, and then I want you, Zion, to do the rest on your own, okay? Well, at least do number 5, and if you want to send it to me, I'll check and see if you get it right. Okay, so number 5. Number 4. Here's x1 and x2. This is y1 and y2. So now, hopefully, you need paper out. Do not do this in your head. Do not ever do slopes with coordinates in your head. So, there's my, if you want to do it like this as well, that might make it a little bit easier for you. Big minus. Big minus. So, if you want to do it this way, that might make it easier, okay? So, my y2 is negative 2. My y1 that's a negative 9. So I'm going to put in parentheses. Do not assume that minus in blue is a negative. It's not. You got to actually write the negative symbol with this. I have 1 minute and 15 seconds. My x2 is 3, and my x1 is 5. So now, it's just simple. Negative 2 minus negative 9 is positive 7. 3 minus 5 is negative 2. And this is my slope. Now, that's the answer. You can put 7 over negative 2. If it was a test answer, it might be written as negative 7 over 2. That's the exact same thing. There's only one negative. It's a negative slope. You also might see the negative on the outside like this. They all mean the same thing. They all have the same value. 7 divided by negative 2 has the same value as negative 7 divided by 2, which is the same thing as negative 7 divided by 2. All the same thing. This should be fine as an answer. If it was a test, you'd probably see one of these as an answer because they usually don't have negatives in the denominator at the bottom of a fraction. But either way, I hope you understood this. I hope it's helpful. It's just a matter of substituting 4 numbers in the proper spots after you label. So first, label these coordinates right here as x1, y1, x2, y2. Label those. And then second, substitute and solve. What's up, Jack? So I hope that's helpful. And do a few, and then send it to me if you want me to check it, and let's see how you did.